This episode, we're getting notes from Sophie Ryder. So here we are, Sophie. I was checking my diary and I think it's 17 years since we were last in the same place together at Yorkshire Sculptor Park.
Wow.
I look slightly different to that now. You don't, actually.
17 years, yeah, I suppose it is.
It was 2008.
Was it 8 or 7?
I think it was 8.
Okay.
Because they'd done the Goldsworthy retrospective for the anniversary.
Okay.
And then following on from that, they had the Noguchi exhibition, and then Your Good Self and Helen Escobedo, I think, were on that summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Wow. It's a long time. Time for another one.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to the Sculpture Park and your relationship with it. But I remember briefly getting to know you a little bit during that time, and it being a great exhibition opening as well. I think
it was really nice.
Your friend Bill played.
He played guitar. Yeah.
Bill Lovelady.
Bill Lovelady.
Yeah, I remember really enjoying that, and we've kind of loosely kept in touch, I guess, through social media and kind of seasonal pleasantries and things. So like with many of our guests, there is an enormous amount to talk about. We've both discussed trying to keep it quite organic and just seeing where things flow authentically. But I like with all of our guests really to kind of delve back into history to where it began. So I think from a creative and artistic perspective, your childhood really, what might have been early influences, inspirations. And I think with you, that's quite an interesting conversation because your childhood was quite interesting.
Yeah. So my mother's French. My father was English. He was a journalist. And my mother used to buy antique jewelry that was broken, and she'd remake it into her own style. And so she was artistic. And she took us to jewelry making classes on a Saturday morning. And that's where I got obsessed with the wire. Started making tiny little sculptures with the copper wire and gold wire, and then it just sort of developed from there as in terms of the wire. But I was very interested in forming things. I was drawing a lot, but it was making things. I could make things out of anything from loo rolls to tissue paper, and I liked 3 dimensions.
And what was your, first of all, the geography of that? So when you say your mum took you to classes.
So I was living in London. We used to spend long summers in the south of France. But yeah, lived in London most of my life. Moved out when I was 17, 12, just after I finished at the Royal Academy. I was 17 when I went to the Royal Academy, and then I left there when I was 20.
We'll come to that in a minute, because you made some formative decisions there in terms of mediums and your work. Yeah. But back to the childhood element, there is a lot of your imagination in your work, and I wonder, as a child, what were you reading? What were you inspired by? What were the worlds that a young Sophie liked to step into or escape to?
My grandfather only had one leg, so he was always in a wheelchair. So I used to sit on his good leg on his knee, and he'd tell us, myself and my middle sister, the most incredible stories, completely fantastical, but we totally believed them, about animals in the jungle and these really, really magical stories, and we were mesmerized by those. And I suppose that it was a storytelling aspect that I try to put into my work now. But it's always about stories, really. And
was he somebody who had lived a life, or had a knack for fiction, or what was he drawing on?
He was in the Resistance. He was one of the leading figures in the Resistance, codenamed Olive. And so yeah, that's where he spent most of his young adult life, in the army. And then he became crippled. Not in the army, not in the war, but he got run over. So I suppose then he had to stop working, but he did draw incredibly well. He was also friends with Bonnard. He lived just in the same apartment as him, always said that he said, come and choose a painting one day. And he never did. We always cross with him about that. But yeah, my brother was a sculptor. My mother obviously was artistic. So it's just been sort of there in the background, but nobody became an artist as such. When
I was reading up a little bit over the past couple of days, there are some wonderful things about your childhood that perhaps a lot of people wouldn't relate to, the some of it, the setting and the context, but also some that I think a lot of creative people would. How did you fit into education away from creativity?
I didn't. I found it really, really difficult. I only wanted to draw and paint and make things. And I told my mother when I was very young, I was 15, I said, if you don't take me out of school now, I'm not going to do anything with my life. And in those days, people didn't come out of school. It was right, you did your O-levels, your A-levels, university. But I thought, I just can't. I was being bullied a lot at school. So she took me out and put me into a crammer just to get my exams to then go on to art school. So I was 16 when I did my...
when you say a crammer, this is like a congested period.
Yeah, 1 year I did 5 O-levels and 3 A-levels, just exactly what I needed to get into art school. So then I went to Kingston Polytechnic, which was fantastic, just 1 year, but basically they teach you all the different ways of working: sculpture, painting, pottery, printmaking, everything, photography. And that was amazing. I loved doing all of them. And then I thought, right now I have to find somewhere to go on to. So I just walked into the Royal Academy schools age 16 and said, can I come here? And they said, well, have you, done all your exams and everything? Anyway, in the end, they took me and I was 17 when I got in there.
I believe making you the second youngest admission they'd had after Turner.
Yeah. So that was amazing. I didn't realise how great it was, but all the other students were much older than me.
And how was that? How did that?
Well, the thing was I was a bit of a loner anyway because I just worked very hard. I was there to work. I wasn't there to have fun. In fact, quite a lot of them were just there to work. I took over the first year studio because when I applied, it was Sir Hugh Casson was there, and he said, well, we've already got 6 for the first year. We only take 6. And I said, well, I really don't want to wait another year. Can I bring you my portfolio? And so I took it in, and he said, okay, we'll make it 7 this year. But then because my work grew and grew and grew in size, they literally boarded off half the first year studio for me so that I couldn't make any bigger work. It could only be contained in that. And I had a little door, and everyone else had these tiny little cubicles, like half the size of this studio, just because they were all painters and I was doing a bit of everything.
Yeah.
But it was only when I got there I realised you weren't allowed to do everything. You had to be there either doing painting or sculpture or printmaking. So I found that quite hard because the sculpture studios were only for postgraduate. Anyway, I carried on doing what I was doing. That's why they blocked me off in the end.
So there's a few things that I want to dive into there. The point you make about being a loner, I'll come back to a little bit later when we talk about some of the characters from your menagerie, because I think there's some obvious connections to that statement there. So they took 7 students instead of 6.
Yeah.
Why do you think they did that? Why do you think they bent that
saw
policy?
Potential in my work.
And what do you think they saw at that stage?
I was drawing very competently. I'd been going to evening classes in Richmond where we lived. I was very driven. They could see that. My portfolio was fat, and I was only 16 when I applied. And they could see that, I really wanted to go there. I didn't know there was another art school. I just thought, I'll just go to the Royal Academy. That's the best one, I didn't realise how many there were at the time. And they asked me, why have you chosen the Royal Academy? And I said, because it's the best one. Anyway, it was great. I took my dog in every day because I said he was my model. I cycled in from Notting Hill with him running behind, and I got there at 8 a.m. and worked till 8 p.m. when everyone had gone home, and the doorman used to come and get me to kick me out.
Was there? I think I know the answer to this, but at this stage in your life and the years predating it, was there much else going on in your life other than your art and your practice, or was it consuming you?
My brother died when I was 15. He was in France and he died in a car accident. My parents were obviously very upset about it, and my mother was actually living in Paris at the time, looking after my grandparents' family business. So I was at home with my father, and it was a horrible, horrible time.
He was 15 when he died?
No, he was 23. I was 15.
You were. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So 8 years between you.
Yeah. So he was the oldest, and then I have 2 middle sisters.
And he'd been a sculptor, had he?
He went to Chelsea.
Right.
Actually.
Okay.
So, which was just specifically sculpture. And yeah, so I just knew from a very early age. I'd been in hospital a lot when I was very little, with suspected leukemia. So, and I just drew and drew and drew the whole time I was in hospital, age 4 or 5, through that year. And so that's what I just knew. That's what I wanted to do. And so there wasn't a question in my mind. That's why I went straight to doing art.
Can you remember what you drew when you were in hospital?
Yeah, I used to draw the weirdest human flowers and families of bumblebees flying along, because we were a family of 6. There was a mother, a father, and 4 children. And the father had a bowler hat and an umbrella and a briefcase and would be flying along. It was just so weird. And then I'd do families of fishes, always families of things. And then these strange flowers, which had very abstract forms, and then human arms and legs. Just covered the walls in them, absolutely covered the wall of my room, because I was not allowed to leave my room. So
that was your escape?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's just all I've ever done, really. It still carries on today. I just feel that's what I do,
Yeah. So you at the academy, you mentioned that as you arrive, you're kind of delving into different mediums.
Yeah.
But now you need to refine.
Yes. I didn't quite realise how strict it would be there in terms of, if you're doing painting, you're in the painting studio. And if you want to do sculpture, you have to go into the sculpture studio. So I just went into the sculpture studio, and one of the students taught me how to weld. And then I got kicked out because I wasn't a postgraduate.
Right.
I was doing my undergraduate. And so they didn't appreciate that. So I then just, when I left, I just started doing sculpture. But Elizabeth Frink...
Were you guided at all?
Not in sculpture.
No. But in the decision making about your medium, was it your decision
No,
by
I wasn't
yourself,
guided at all. I mean, there were tutors, but they didn't really know what to do with me because I wasn't doing traditional drawing. I very rarely would sit and draw the things that we were being told to draw. I found it quite difficult. I was a little, not a rebel, but I just knew what I wanted to do and didn't want someone telling me how to do it. I didn't particularly want to learn how to draw properly. And actually, I'm quite pleased I didn't learn how to draw properly, because it's like when children draw, as soon as they start learning how to draw, it ruins it completely. Yeah. And I find that, although people look at my work and they think it's quite representational, if you actually put one of my horses or dogs or humans next to the real thing, it's completely incorrect in technical terms. But then that's why it has a different, it has it's my style, it's my voice on it.
I think there's a really if we're doing anything of purpose here, ideally the show is supposed to be useful to either a younger you or somebody looking to progress in similar craft or worlds to yourself. That about following your own kind of organic route of honing your craft, I think is really interesting. And in different disciplines, there can almost be a formulaic factory process where institutes churn out across any discipline, be it choreography, performance, art. It kind of becomes like a factory style almost sometimes. So is that something that, balancing the academic experience you've had versus the organic self-taught or exploring that you've done with your craft, is there a ratio there, or is there one that you would recommend as more important than the other? Or
I think that the one thing you can learn from at art school is techniques of how to use materials, Again, nobody was working in wire, so I couldn't learn that from anyone. And because I wasn't doing sculpture, I wasn't allowed to go in the sculpture studio, I couldn't learn that. I had to learn all how to make sculpture totally on my own. But learning how to do printmaking, that was great. I spent most of my time in the printmaking studio because to me that felt like in between painting and sculpture because it was so physical and you had to, grind into the plate or, ink it up and rub it down. It was all very physical. And I did a lot of collage as well because that was also a kind of mixed media. But in terms of learning how to paint, I didn't really learn anything. I still don't know. I mean, I'm painting a lot at the moment, but I haven't got a clue if I'm doing it how you're supposed to do it. I use ready-made paints rather than at the academy. A lot of people were making their own paints, which is quite fun. But I need an immediate result with things. So a lot of my work does take a long time, like the white pieces, take a long time to make. But with the painting, I just want to get on with it,
Yeah.
But I don't know the proper techniques of how you're supposed to be doing it.
Well, when you say proper techniques, the most common techniques, perhaps, I think sometimes that's the problem, that people say, this is the way, instead of this is a way. Yeah. And it may be the most popular or the most subscribed, but it is only...
I think that,
an option.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are things you have to be... If you want your work to last, you have to be careful of certain things. Like you can do acrylic painting on a canvas and then put oil on it, but you can't do it the other way around. Things like that are kind of just sensible. You have to just know you can't put water on top of oil. It's not going to stay on there. And if you want your painting to be there in 20 years' time, you make sure that you use good materials. Yeah. And light, fast materials. And
so I think an important balance of the two, of self-discovery and exploration of your own organic routes of learning and taking advantage of also having a studio, being a young student. Resources,
having a studio, having other artists around you who can help you if you don't know how to do something. Like the guy who helped me to weld, who I saw briefly. Well, actually, he arrived late, but he went to a party I went to the other day, sort of 30 years on, or is it more? I can't remember. 1984, I left the academy.
Okay.
So, without people teaching you things, but it was more students helping me than the teachers.
And that actually, I think, from my experience, is probably the biggest benefit of academic institutes, is the, not necessarily collaboration, but the being around other people, the environmental
all doing
learning.
The same thing. Yeah.
We'll talk about YSP a little bit later, but I studied at Bretton Hall when everything was still being taught there. So there was everything from kind of dance, theatre, production, sculpture was still being taught there. Yeah. And I trained as an actor, but lived with sculptors, and that was just the most incredible part of it. It broadened my horizons, my knowledge and interest so diversely and vastly, that if I'd just gone to an acting school, or if I'd just self-taught or just gone at it without academic training, I would never have had that whole life experience. And actually now in my working life, the thing that I enjoy most is interdisciplinary collaboration and working with artists of different forms and mediums. And I would never have learned those different languages, not that I'm fluent in all of them, but I would never have learned that had I not put myself in that environment. You mentioned just now a moment ago with painting, you wanting something immediately, but you must be able to suspend that impatience when you're working with your sculptural forms.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them
they take so long. That's why with
crawling
the paint
was 3 years, or
I mean, crawling was one of the first big pieces I made, and actually I didn't really make a proper armature, so the whole thing collapsed on top of me. I got buried in a pile of 3 weeks worth of plaster. It was still quite damp, so I didn't get hurt. But I then immediately, when anything like that happens, I go straight back, and it's like getting back on a horse straight away. Otherwise, it's so depressing. I just can't bear it. So I had to start welding again and get it to be strong before putting. And that's the one thing I've learnt from my mistake, that always build a proper armature, even if it takes longer than the sculpture's going to take, because that's the most important thing.
One of the standard questions that we ask all guests is, what is the best mistake you've ever made?
That one was, because it was just so annoying that I just spent 3 weeks. And when I say 3 weeks, I worked like 12 to 15 hours a day, you know, and it all fell off. So I had to literally start from scratch. So that taught me not to do that again.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you hurt yourself? Was it?
No, not really. I mean, it fell on top of me, but it was all very wet plaster, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But another one I've done before that, a small one, but even then, the small one took a long time. It was on a turntable, and I kept turning. It was the maquette for Hugging. It's a very popular piece of mine, and I kept turning it to work on it, kept turning. I finally called my assistant, Charlie, and said, you can come and get it now, because I just can't stop working on it, because she makes my molds. So she came over, she said, okay, I'll come over in a couple of minutes. And as we were we had walkie-talkies then, this was a long time ago, the whole thing collapsed to the ground, because I'd turned it so many times that the thing had come out of the turntable and it fell to the ground. And so the sculpture just dropped 3 feet and smashed into 100 pieces. And oh my God, I had to start working. I worked till midnight just to get it vaguely back together, and then spent another month or so on it.
I think that's also a really interesting trait and approach, to avoid the dwelling or contemplation.
Yeah, you can't. You have to get on with it, you know. Can't sit around being sorry about it. As
you're talking about it, it reminds me of in Rivers and Tides, there's a sequence where Goldsworthy is building the cairns, I think either with stone or out of ice, I can't quite remember. And he keeps getting to a certain point, maybe 2/3, and it's painstakingly slow and precise. Mm-hmm. And it collapses. And I think it's a similar thing where you can see the momentary could go nuts, could absolutely lose it, but must carry on.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. So we're at the Academy. You've refined your mediums and materials that you're working with somewhat because you've had to. What about the themes of your work? Were there already prevalent themes that are still present now, emerging then?
There were more humans then. And dogs, because I had my dog there, so I had to prove that I needed him as a model. So I did drawings of him, made some sculpture of him. And then just as I left the Academy, I got a phone call from Yorkshire Sculpture Park, from Peter Murray, saying, do you want to come and do a residency? And I had no idea what a residency was. And I said, sure, what is that? And he said, you come and live here for 3 months and make sculpture outside. So it was Elizabeth Frink who'd put me forward for it. I didn't even know I was being put forward for it. So I just went to Yorkshire. I got a caravan, put it in a field full of cows, and stayed there for 3 months with my dog. And it was the first time in a million years that it didn't rain all summer in Yorkshire. So I had the most fantastic time, made a flock of sheep, and a life-size horse, which I called Son of York after Henry Moore, who died just as I was making it.
Right. He died during your residency.
Yeah.
Okay. Which for anybody who's not familiar with the Sculpture Park, Elizabeth Rink, Barbara Hepworth, Henry Moore, the most fundamental initial artists that fill the landscape there. So that must have been quite a moment to be there.
Yeah, really, because weirdly, I had been to Elizabeth Frink's because her son was friends with my brother who had died.
Right.
But I kept going to see him and had a bit of a crush on him. And so she was taking me to the Henry Moore one, to his house for Sunday lunch 2 weeks after he died. But so we never got to go together, which was really sad. I was really looking forward to that. But anyway, that's why I called the sculpture Son of York, because he was born in York. So
this is 1986, I think.
Yeah.
I read from the exhibition book, Peter describes you turning up with just you and a dog, and staying, as you say, in the caravan. So what were you might have just mentioned this, but the themes that you were exploring, or was there any expectation from the park? You say you didn't know what a residency was. How do you what was the brief that was established for your time there, or the expectation?
I was making sculpture in a 1-bedroom flat in Queensdale Road in London. And so, just filling up this tiny space with huge wire sculptures. And so he just said, do you want to come and make some sculpture outside? Because I suppose Liz must have told him that what I was doing. And I had no idea how to make sculpture for outside or anything for the elements or anything like that. But so I just went there, spent 3 months making these sheep. And then years later, Peter came to see me in my studio in Gloucestershire and offered me the exhibition.
That was in...
Oh, that was that was a pre-exhibition. So that wasn't the exhibition in 2008. That was one...
Yeah, that was 96.
In 1989 or 1990.
Right. Yeah. That was the sheep.
Yeah, the flock of sheep.
Yeah. So how did that time at the Sculpture Park change your consideration about the space around?
Yeah, well, it immediately made me feel like I wanted to work bigger.
Yeah.
And make work for landscapes.
I mean, that, as you say, going from the small flats.
Yeah.
Just for your physical space and being able to kind of stretch your legs a little bit.
So, I just wanted to work bigger and make work that could stand up for itself in a landscape. And as you know, the landscape there is pretty magnificent.
Yeah.
And so I just carried on working. I got a studio in All Saints Road, filled that up. I did quite well commercially with a gallery in Cork Street, which was great. All my work went to art fairs and sold out before the opening night.
And what was selling well? What could you see that was popular?
I made a lot of sheep, actually, wire sheep, and I was making minotaurs, some dogs as well. It just came flooding out of me. I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. I loved minotaurs because of Greek mythology, because of Picasso.
Yeah.
And just whatever popped into my mind. I didn't really sit and think about it for very long because I was just very prolific. And then I moved to Gloucestershire to get more space, to have a bigger studio.
So just hang on, because this is a pivotal point and transition we're about to make, but my brain is racing and I just want to hop back just to reassure listeners, it doesn't rain every summer in Yorkshire. You commented on that. I just there are some gloriously sunny days throughout the summer in Yorkshire. So you develop this relationship with the Sculpture Park with Peter, I assume, and it triggers these different thoughts about your work, the surroundings, and how you might create. You just then started to talk about the characters from your menagerie that have kind of jumped out of your imagination. Some of them familiar forms, like you say, that Picasso and other artists have referenced and used the Minotaur, but then some purely originated and brought to life.
So I was making the Minotaur, and I was wanting to have a companion for him, I suppose, and a female version of the Minotaur. And so I was thinking, well, what could go with the female body in terms of a head? So I tried a hare head, and immediately it felt right. It felt like it was meant to be. They went so well together, totally different, yet really fitted very well. And, the big long ears felt like it was like a mane of hair. And so they started off being part of the head. Was the hare head just went straight down into the body, and then gradually over the years it changed into a mask, so that you could see that the bodies were completely human by then, and the mask was just covering up the identity of the human underneath. So, and they've never really left, really. I didn't know how long they'd go on for, whether I'd get bored of making them, but I haven't yet. And I don't even see that it's a hare head anymore, because I just see the human inside. So the masks are very much just there to allow anyone to take from the work whatever they want to, rather than seeing a portrait of me, which inevitably they'd all look like me. So they're not portraits, they're anybody who wants to imagine themselves in that position or that situation.
The hair itself has been used a lot, iconically, and to symbolize different things culturally.
Yeah.
Was there any particular motivation behind you?
No, I dread to tell you, but it was my lurcher, the same dog I had at the Royal Academy, who brought me home a hare, horrifically, and that's when I drew it, and that's what gave me the idea to use it. I thought, at least I've used this poor animal for something, and immortalized it, because they are beautiful. I mean, people don't realize how they're so different to rabbits, and
so different to rabbits in their behavior and their traits and anatomy.
Very clever, very, very fast, very quick at disappearing. If they see danger.
And you mentioned earlier on about feeling a bit of a loner or but they are also quite a singular creature in the wild as well.
Yeah, they're always alone unless they're boxing.
Yeah.
But they tend to live alone. They don't live in groups like with rabbits.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting how people project or fill the gaps that they don't know? And now you're mentioning that about the lurcher bringing you the rabbit. I have a faint recollection of it, but there's so many other reasons that one might project as to why you might have chosen the hare. So I like that was the reason. And it's a good segue momentarily into dogs, which could be a whole separate episode that we could do.
Yeah.
There's always been dogs in your life as far as I can tell, and quite a few of them, and with you virtually 24/7.
Well, I nearly bought them, but then I thought, no, they might need to go out halfway through or something. But anyway, no, I only have 3 at the moment.
You lost one in August.
I lost one in August, who was nearly 17.
Wowzers.
Horrible. It's like losing, I mean, people who don't have dogs think this is a ridiculous thing to say, but it is like losing a member of your family. I was closer to him than I was to my fiance, who also left me on the same day that I had him put down. And I can tell you which one makes me more tearful. It's definitely the dog.
Yeah.
So, I'm so close with my dogs. Without them, I would be very lonely, but they're with me 24 hours a day. And they're very calm dogs indoors, not so calm outdoors, but now I've fenced my property in. They can't get out anymore, so they're completely free to run around 20 acres. But they're also incredibly beautiful, the shape of them, they're all Italian Greyhound Whippets. So they're just such a beautiful shape. So I know them so well now that I don't even need to have them in the room when I'm drawing them. Although they really like it when I am drawing them. They know somehow.
To strike a pose?
Yeah. Or they just look at me, and especially Luigi. The boy dogs are very much more clingy than the girl dogs. And he knows, and he just poses for me. But I did a lot of head drawings of their heads. And then I got a whole load of people asking for commissions of their dogs.
Really? As if you were an animal.
But I can't do it. It's really, without being rude to people, it's really hard to explain. Don't do portraits of other people's dogs. It's just because they're my dogs, because I love them and I know I can feel their souls and the particular type of dog they are, Anyway, so I find it easy to draw them. So I've done portraits of all of them. It's a bit like doing my children. I've got portraits of my dogs on the walls.
In equal ratio?
No, much more of the dogs. But my girls absolutely know that my dogs come first.
Top billing.
But they're grown up now. They've got their own children.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to draw on there. I am absolutely a dog person. And you're right. It might sound ridiculous to somebody who is not a dog person, but actually your relationship with a dog is way less conditional than that with
unconditional
a person.
Love. Yeah.
And they share, even in the most intimate relationships, we have masks or we have versions of ourselves that we present, which you don't with the dog. So in a way, these kind of creatures get to know the most real version of you.
Yeah.
We grew up with dogs and have dogs. We actually, from our time in the Caribbean, we rescued a little Chihuahua Jack Russell cross. They call it an island retriever. It's a bit of everything. And
best type.
Yeah.
It's mixed.
She is feral when we first had her and has become mildly domesticated. But the past couple of years, I've been working from home much more. And just the joy of having the dog around me all day for my well-being.
No, it's great.
Did your parents have dogs? Did you have dogs growing up?
I was desperate for a dog growing up. At Christmas, I used to write a list. Mummy would say, write me a Christmas list. I'd write dog 100 times. And then my sister got a Burmese cat who was the most vicious little rat bag ever. And I was so jealous that she'd got a cat, but this cat was so vicious we had to give it away in the end when it was about 15, kept attacking people. And it lived until she was 30, I think. It's crazy. But no, we had a dog in France on the farm, but he wasn't my dog. And it was only when I was 17 when I met my first husband. He had a dog, and that is the only reason I went out with him, because I just fell madly in love with his dog. And it was a lurcher. And so I've always kept the same kind of dogs.
How do you come by them?
At first, when we lost that lurcher, I wanted another one. So I got another one. And then we had a terrier at the same time. The terrier then died. And I thought I'd really like a terrier cross with a lurcher. And I found one in Wales. And that was the beginning of me. Every 5 years, I'd have a bitch, and I'd breed a litter from her and always keep a bitch. So for about 8 generations, I did it. And then I started feeling really guilty about breeding dogs because of all the dogs who need homes. So I stopped 12 years ago, and I still have 2 from that line.
Yeah.
And then I rescued one 3 years ago. So you can find the same kind of dogs. A lot of people are breeding them now with Whippet.
They've become, I wonder whether it's almost because more people have adopted them, or that they then seem to become a bit more of a popular breed to see around. Yeah. Close to where my family live, there is a great charity called Greyhound Gap, who specifically to begin with took in greyhounds and lurchers, and is it Salukis or those kind of breeds? They now kind of they've become a stop shop for all dogs that need rescuing. But I'm sure like
they're
you're
great
saying,
dogs. I mean, apart from their prey drive, they are hunters. There's nothing. My mother always says, you've got to stop them. You can't stop them. They can be the best, most fantastically behaved dogs in the house. They're so quiet, so calm. The minute I open the front door, they are off with a hunting scream, ready to find the squirrels. I mean, luckily there are so many trees, the squirrels, and my studio roof, the squirrels live in there. But they are hunters, born and bred.
And there's nothing that we're going to do that's going to undo centuries worth of those inherent instincts.
No. But apart from that, they're such lovely dogs. They're quiet, you know, in the house mainly. They're quiet. Outside, they're just running. But they are great because for me, they're models as well. You know? So it's important for me to have that type of dog.
So Sophie and I will be launching a separate podcast on dogs, but for now we'll segue back into your work. You mentioned the farm, Ryder Park now as it's known, and that was a journey in itself. So you didn't per se find somewhere to work; you found and built somewhere that would become a canvas for your work.
It was basically built how I needed it. So it's a huge cowshed that we converted into a studio. Then my first husband built the house we lived in at first, and then converted the big barn into a home which I'm now living in. And the sculpture park, we drew it on a big piece of paper how we wanted it to be, and planted 4,000 trees with kind of paths so that I could run around with the dogs, but also areas within that where you could put sculpture. So we'd already mapped out spaces for sculpture.
Yeah.
And then there are big open spaces for the really big pieces. And because I'm walking around it 2 or 3 times a day with the dogs, I get to choose where to put things for the best light, for the best angle, you know, for when you're walking around. And, you know, I take little groups of people around sometimes. Like on Sunday, I took a group of villagers. So I after my fiance left, after being with him for 16 years and then with my husband for 31 years, I didn't realize I hadn't actually ever invited the villagers to come in for a walk. So I invited some of the local people, and they were thrilled because they walk past the door every day, past the gates. But they can sort of see a few of the bigger pieces, but nothing else.
Really? So somewhat of a mysterious...
Yeah, so it almost felt like, okay, I've been a recluse for too long now. I've got to start being a bit more sociable with people. So I let them all come. I mean, it was really nice. So it's nice for people to put a face to the hermit artist who lives in that field.
I love that. And I saw a picture on your Instagram of somebody visiting horseback.
Oh, yes, I have friends who live locally. In fact, that person was the person I rented my first studio from in the Gloucestershire. He's now moved closer to where I live.
So it's incredible the place and space that you've created to create in. Talk to us a little bit about your studio. What's the kind of environment that you like to have?
Well, I have 3 studios there. So there's the really big, sort of cold, horrible, messy one where I do all the messy stuff like plaster. And that's when the foundry come in and they'll make a mold in there, because that's also incredibly smelly and messy, and you need a big space for that. And then there's the one next to that, which is slightly cleaner, where I do the wire, and I've got a wood burner in there. So that's a bit nicer. And then my assistant, Charlie, she's got a little studio within that studio where she does the small molds. So when I make smaller pieces, she'll make the molds and waxes in there. And then I've got my other studio across the yard, which is for drawing and painting and mosaic, which is my warm studio. So I spend most of the winter in there while everyone else freezes in the other studio. And I'm doing some very large oil paintings at the moment, which I'm really enjoying, because I haven't done any oil paintings since the academy. And then I've got Rob, who is my assistant, who helps to keep the park looking amazing. As you can imagine, 20 acres of parkland, it's a full-time job doing that. And he helps me with welding, and when I'm making big wire pieces, he'll help with that too. So
when you are creating pieces, characters, is their home, is their spiritual home Ryder Park?
No, doesn't matter where I am. because I have a house in the south of France and I can be working there. It doesn't make any difference which country I'm in to what I'm working on.
It doesn't.
No.
Okay. No seasonality either.
No.
But so when you're creating 3-dimensional forms, you don't first envisage them in your landscape. No. They are kind of free to.
Yeah.
We have a feature called Message and a Bottle, where we dispatch a bottle of the guest's preferred tipple to them, accompanied by a message or a question by somebody that knows them or knows their work. So we have a question for you from Claire Lilly, formerly of Yorkshire Sculptor Park. Claire said, "Hello, Sophie. When I think of you, I always recall how at home you are constantly using your hands, bending and forming wire, and also how your whole body moves when you talk about sculpture. Richard Serra said that he draws every day to keep his drawing muscle on form. Does that seem familiar to you?"
Yeah, definitely.
So talk to us then a little bit about your daily habits and rituals around that.
Well, it's like anything that, if you're going to make your whole life as an artist, you have to do it every day. I mean, because it's not just a job, it's a need. It's like eating and sleeping. And it's like playing the piano or playing the guitar specifically. If you leave it for a day or two, your hands forget. And it's true, you can be very proficient in something, but you need to practice it a lot. Otherwise you do get rusty, or you just forget little things, I mean, did you want to know what I do in a day?
Yeah, I'd like to know a little about your rituals and routines, perhaps. And I get a sense, I might be leading you and I might be wrong, but I get a sense that if you're not permitted to do those things, or if you don't get the chance to, that you could become frustrated.
I already sort of, I don't really bite my nails anymore, but that's what I'd do if I was taken away from my work for too long. Because it would just send me bonkers. I can't bear being on holiday for that reason. I just can't bear the thought of having to go and be on holiday, unless I was actually visiting art museums or something like that. But no, I get up. I have a really strict routine. And if it goes wrong, then I'm getting better at things interfering with it, or, like now that I've got grandchildren, I let them in. That will interfere with my routine and I don't begrudge it. I find it annoying if someone turns up just when I'm about to do something, Or,
just the tone in your voice as you said that.
It's like, damn, this is not the right time, but it's never the right time for someone to turn up unless I know they're coming.
Yeah.
So that's quite good. The good thing about living in the middle of a field is that people don't usually just turn up. They usually plan it. But no, I get up, I go for swimming every 6 days a week. So I swim for, I swim for about 2 kilometers every day, between 1 and 2 kilometers, which keeps you really fit. I then come home, breakfast, and take the dogs for their walk, and then into the studio until lunchtime, and then back to work after an hour's lunch break, and then another dog walk. Then I work till 5, and then I feed the dogs, do a workout in my own gym, and then carry on working. But in the house, so then I have a little studio in my office. So it's a kind of like relaxing work where I make smaller things and I can do it in my pajamas because it's not dirty. I'm using a lot of this kind of clay it's like a cross between plasticine and wax. So it's quite nice. You can leave it. You don't have to cover it with water or cloths or anything, but it looks and feels like clay without the wet and dirtiness of it. And that's quite useful because you can just go and do 20 minutes or, however long you want and leave it, and it doesn't dry out. So that's really nice. Or drawing, obviously. The little paintings I do in my office.
You have you always had the exercise in particular? Have you always had that need or drive for that, or is that something that you've built more of into your life as you've got older? Or
people, when I'm working on something really big, I'm usually up scaffolding or ladders and all that kind of thing. So you have to keep, and it sounds like that's the fitness part, but it's not. You have to keep balanced and fit to be able to do all that. So yeah, I've always been like that. I've always been very sporty. And I don't know why, because my parents weren't particularly, but I've always really been into sport and healthy. And I cook a lot. I cook everything from scratch. I make my own bread. I'm gluten-free, but I make it with chickpeas and buckwheat. And I'm always developing different recipes. I've written a vegan cookbook. So I really can't say I enjoy cooking so much as I enjoy the outcome of it. Right. Because it's a lot of washing up and all that kind of thing. I would love it if I could just do it and then someone else came to clear up.
How does and yet that's interesting, that because that speaks to maybe the necessity of it for you, because yet with your work, I can't imagine you not wanting your hands on and being kind of deeply involved tangibly with the craft of it.
Yeah. No, I am. But there are things that I do, like the big wire pieces, which can take up to 2 years, from the armature, which is so detailed, which is made at the foundry, but with a lot of help, we kind of always talking about how it's going to be and everything. The big ones, they do that with me. And then making the wire that goes on to the armature. So I've already designed the armature way before I start covering it, because when I cover it, it's already the right shape. Yeah. So it doesn't change from then. So all the hard work's gone into that armature. And then the putting of the wire is kind of tedious. It's dirty and it hurts your fingertips, and it's kind of like, it's not that it's easy, but it's not the most difficult thing. It's not, I don't have to do a lot of thinking. So it's almost like meditation when I'm doing it, and I can have help when I'm doing that. So, but making the big plaster pieces, that is really hard work, because you're making it in sections and then they have to fit together afterwards. So as much as we can, we try and put them together on a day when it's not raining outside, because they're usually too big to put together inside, just to make sure that all the joins fit. So I will do the plaster over them. But yeah, it's just, working is not work. For me, it's a necessity. It's
flow.
Yeah.
2 quick follow-ups on the early days at Ryder Park. I read somewhere that you would trade produce with people locally.
Yeah. So we actually, before I became vegan, with my first husband, we had sheep, pigs. We were completely self-sufficient. We had everything. We had a vegetable, one of the first polytunnels in Gloucestershire. And in fact, Dalesford came and asked us how to, to have a look at it, to see how to do it. And then we'd get milk from the locals. So we'd give them lamb and they'd give us milk. And so we just bartered with them. So we literally didn't have to go shopping at all.
And you dug a well?
Yeah, we dug a borehole. So we have our own water, which is incredible. In fact, I find it really hard to drink tap water.
Well, I half suspected, I wasn't sure if you might turn up with some, because I read that on certain traps. You have?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Because it's just, I cannot drink tap water. My mother will drink tap water because she's been told she has to drink water. My mother's 99 and she lives alone in London, and my sister's always saying...
She lives independently alone in it?
Yeah.
Wow.
My sister's help look after her most days, but she won't live with anyone. She wants to be on her own. And she's outlived every male in her life. She's incredible. And she drinks this tap water. And I said, Mummy, it's disgusting. You've got to get bottled water because this just tastes horrible. To me, I can't even make my green tea with it because it tastes like chlorine. But I'm spoilt because mine is so good.
The isolation of where you are, is that something that kind of sits well with your character and the nature that?
Yes. although it can be lonely in the evenings. Even though I'm busy working, it was when I had my fiancé living there, or my husband, or my girls, it's nice having someone in the same house.
Yeah.
You don't have to be together all the time, but just having someone there.
There's a sense of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a little bit lonely, but not in the daytime. I mean, I'm never bored. I'm never like, what shall I do now? I have to go out to be inspired or to keep busy. But I don't need that. I've got so much to do. I've got too much to do. I've never have time to do everything I want to do. But, it is. I'd never have necessarily chosen to be so isolated if I'd known I was going to be on my own.
Right.
I've only been on my own for 2 months. So
so it's new.
it's early
new
days,
still, yeah. But you do have grandkids.
I do.
Now.
And 2 of them live locally.
Great.
So 2 little boys, Frankie and Albie, they live in Cheltenham, so it's not very far.
And if I remember, I think we were talking about the opening of your exhibition in 2008 alongside Helen Escobedo, and your friend Bill Lovelady performed.
Yeah.
Very accomplished musician and guitarist, and I think commissioned by Prince Philip, I think, at one time.
Yeah.
But I think that Nell sang with him. Am I misremembering that? Or,
yeah,
right.
She's a singer, and she plays. He taught her. I took her out of school because she, as well, at age 15, or actually even younger, was not liking it. And so she went to learn 3 days a week with him. So he taught her amazingly. And so she's now living in Milan. She has 2 children. I'm hoping that when the children are a little bit older, she'll go back to singing, because it's really hard she's now a single mum with 2 little children. But yeah, she's artistic as well. She paints and does a bit of everything. And I played guitar. Because I was taking her every day, I started learning classical guitar, and I became totally obsessed with it. I mean, to the point where I would play for 6 hours a night, literally. And I got quite good. I got good enough to be able to do duets with Bill. But if I'd leave it, this is the whole thing about practice, is if I'd leave it for a few days, I'd forget. My hands would forget. And I'd literally just sit there thinking, I can't. I even reading the music, your fingers forget where they're supposed to go. So I stopped in the end because it was such hard work. It wasn't natural for me. It was too hard for me to do it without. It was a choice. Either I do that in the evenings or I do my work in the evenings. And the work was a nicer, more relaxing thing for me to do.
Yeah, well, thinking about the tangible aspects of your work and the bending and shaping and bashing, and then to go and play 6 hours guitar in the evening, it sounds quite punishing almost.
Well, also my fiancé at the time, the one who's just left, he said, do you have to keep playing the same old tunes over and over and over? And I said, yes, you do. Otherwise you forget how to play them. And it was so rewarding when you actually could play them. That you could only do that if you did it every day. Yeah. And I grew up playing the piano, and I can still play a bit of piano, and I can read music. But again, it's not my thing. And I knew that when I was 10, I realized that my best friend's little sister walked in and played Mozart's Sonata in C, which I'd just spent a year learning. And she just sight read it and played it so much better than, she was only 6, she played it better than me. And I thought, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to be a musician then, because there are people who are much better than me and they're age 6, So it was definitely, because I did a lot of gymnastics as a child, and there were people who were better than me. So I wanted to be the best at what I did.
How does that relate to your work as an artist then? How do you measure competition or success in that context?
Well, I just knew that's what I wanted to do, and then nothing ever was going to get in my way. I just did it until I became successful. I wasn't going to stop. Just made it happen. I mean, there's only one way, and it's just to work all the time. Yeah. Every waking hour, I'm working.
And I know from your lifestyle, you allow kind of few distractions.
I don't have distractions.
Yeah.
People used to, mothers at school would invite me to coffee, and I'm working. I don't go and do coffee. Thinking on that, your girls must have had a very different upbringing to their kids.
Like generationally, quite a difference.
Well, Maud, my eldest, who lives in Cheltenham, when she was about 8, they asked her to do a project on what she wanted to be when she grew up. And so she came to school the next day and just didn't come in with anything. She just said, but I know what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a mummy. And they went, well, don't you want to have a career? She said, yeah, my mummy has a career and she's a mummy. So, but what she meant by that is she said, you get to stay at home all day and do art. So that's what I want to do, you know. So they just grew up with me working all the time, and they'd come into the studio and it was fun, you know, for them. It was fun. So they're both very artistic, my girls. But
I remember you saying about, I don't think there was a TV around until
we didn't have a television.
Maybe teens. So naturally they read more, I guess.
Yeah, they read. My goodness, they read avidly. And drew and did art with me in the studio. And we had loads of animals because at that time we had the sheep and the pigs and the dogs, and, you know, so they read a lot, and I cooked with them. And so until the youngest one was 12 before we got a video, you know, a television. And they really, you know, luckily they didn't grow up with computers, so it was just beginning. Yeah, and so they got away, you know.
I think maybe it's 1995 or somewhere around there. But there's a kind of pinnacle point where children born after that point have lived such a fundamentally different life to.
So mine were 1989 and 1991. Yeah, and so they just missed it. Thank God, thank goodness, because it makes my blood boil. Even when my grandsons turn up with their rucksacks, with their iPads and their telephones, and I'm like, okay, I hide all the chargers so that when they ask to recharge, I say I haven't got one. And so, they run out of batteries, and then they have to do other things. But then they love it. They come for walks with me in the dark. We have head torches on and we take the dogs for a walk, and they absolutely love it. But luckily they've started playing football now. So that's
you have space. You have space for that too.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first significant exhibition of your work? The first moment that you actually maybe felt a sense of your arrival on the scene or becoming established, or that this would be a turning point or a moment?
Well, I did have exhibitions in between my foundation course and the Royal Academy, which sold very well. And then the Academy show sold out, my final year show. So that was great. And then from that, I got an exhibition with Berkeley Square Gallery. So it just sort of progressed on its own. But I don't know. I mean, for me, it's always the last thing. I mean, the Yorkshire Sculpture Park exhibition was fantastic for me. All of them, the first one and the second one, and the residency as well. For me, that was because that's where I wanted to be, in a sculpture park in the open air, So for me, that was the most important. And installations, not just a sculpture on a tabletop, Obviously, I make little pieces and I show them in galleries. But for me, they're only a means to an end, really. Even though they can be very precious on their own, when I'm looking at this little piece and making this little piece, I see it 30 feet high, so I'm working towards that. So for me, this year in April, I had some work outside the Grand Palais in Paris for the Paris Art Fair. And that was amazing. Really, really, I felt really good about that. These wire pieces, which I spend years making, which I can benefit from in my sculpture park, but then taking them from there to Paris was really fantastic. And that's what it's all about, is showing big work in public spaces.
And that is, I wonder, is that the highest footfall potentially that your work has ever sat in front of?
I should think so, yeah.
I mean, architecturally, it's one of the most iconic buildings.
I was so excited about the potential of it going there that we went all out. I worked with a gallery in a Swiss gallery called Gowan Contemporary, and they saw the vision of it, and I saw the vision of it, and we just worked our socks off to get it accepted, because it was quite, the sort of sacred ground it was going on. I mean, they didn't want anything ruined. We weren't allowed to attach it to the ground, and it's 22 feet high, and we had to put sandbags inside them to make them be safe, and so many considerations when you're making sculpture for outside, in public spaces, because whether people can climb on them, or whether people can hurt themselves on the wire, or, you have to be aware of absolutely everything, which is something I'm getting used to, but
still getting used to.
Yeah, because, you really do have to think about those things.
Yeah. So what strikes me about your work, Sophie, is how versatile it is when citing it, and the range of, or from the context of the grand play behind in front of that phenomenal architecture, to then by comparison the sculpture part, where I'm quite familiar with seeing it, and actually I think sitting that was next to the Camellia House, in my mind now, and I lived there for the best part of a decade, one way or another. It is synonymous with the Camellia House.
Yes,
I think of it sat there, and there's such a rich history to the sculpture park, pre-sculpture park, and pre-Bretton Hall. It has quite a tropical history, and different owners have been collectors of eclectic pieces. There was I think in 1777, I might be getting the dates wrong, but there was an owner had died, and I think her son, with whom she didn't get on, sold everything that she'd collected. I think it was Diana Blackett Wentworth, but again, that might be wrong. And there was an auction called a Miscellany of Valuables, and it just lot for lot, these artifacts and exhibits were so tropical, and there's a real kind of magic and mystery of it. And so I think to me, knowing that history, I always felt like your work and the kind of mythology and mysticism of it really sat well in the landscape and evoked some of that. And I know how well you worked with the team there, citing that work. What is the balance like in those situations when you're citing your work with an institute? Is it a process that you will lead? Is that not always the case?
Not
is
always.
It a balance?
In fact, when I was working with Claire Lilly, when I was putting on my second exhibition at Yorkshire Sculpture Park, because I'm so prolific, I have so much work, and if it's all new work that's never been seen, I want to put it all in. And Claire was like, wait, hold on. We're just going to have one drawing there, because of my big wire drawings. And she was so right to do that, because I would have totally overcrowded it. So, and it's the same with the gallery I work with, the Hignell Gallery. She always stops me from overcrowding, because I tend to want to show everything, because I've been working hard making all these pieces. Why wouldn't I want to show them all? But then it ends up looking like a supermarket, So it's important that you listen to the people who are actually going to be spending all the time in the space, just like me in my sculpture park. I'm the best person to decide how that's arranged. But it's the same thing for gallery owners or curators. They know how their space better. And
so, it's such an important relationship. They know the audience, they know the space, and sometimes you do need curating for your own interest.
Definitely. And so it's always a good idea to actually go to a space and spend time there before. That's why when I put on shows in museums and public art galleries, we always visit many times before to do a layout and really look at it, carefully before just going in and plonking them.
You were talking about you choosing the work and new work, which I think is, we were talking about music a little while ago. often hear musicians talk about the audience demand, and when they tour, they want to perform all of their new stuff.
Yeah.
But oftentimes people have come for their greatest hits.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And, my work has changed from quite a lot, I think. But strangely, I was the one who sort of would not want to show the older work. But then more recently, I've been doing a few sort of more retrospective kind of exhibitions, which has been really nice, actually. And I'm very proud of the work that I did when I was younger.
Have there been points in your career when that would be a frustration?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have that, But now I think it's nice because it shows people how it's progressed, how it started and how it's like a journey, So yeah, I think it's important, if it's good enough, that it should be shown, and it's nice to see the progression of it. It's like walking around my Sculptor Park on Sunday. Some of the pieces out in my park are 30 years old. And when I tell people that, they're always really shocked because it's not that different to what I'm doing now. But in fact, the piece I'm working on at the moment, which is only this big, but I'm making it 30 feet high in wire. And I felt like I was making a completely new piece. It was a new position. It was, I really get, it really, really spend hours and hours working to make sure it's exactly the position I want. And I don't have a reference. It's all from my head, so. And then I suddenly realized it's really similar to a piece I made 15 years ago. I walked out of my front door, and there, sitting next to my front door, is a piece, really practically identical to the one I'm working on that I thought was completely new position for me. And it's not. It's just slightly different, but it's not a different position. So it's funny how you do go back and rework things without realizing what you're doing.
Yeah. Especially, I guess, if you've been prolific as well, worked to such a volume. Do you have a good memory for your work?
People, I get people on Instagram and things sending me pictures saying, could we have a letter of provenance? And I'm looking at this thing thinking, did I make that? And I said, where did you get it from? And, sometimes it's not mine. It's just somebody who's copied me and they want to sell it at auction or keep it, but want to put insurance value on it. Or
do you mean in terms of plagiarized your style?
No, literally not just my style, but subject matter and everything. And I've had one recently from Australia who said they bought it in London. And I was like, sorry, but it's not mine. And, but then some of the things are mine and they're from 30, 40 years ago. And I think, oh my God, I can't remember doing that. But then, of course, I know it was mine. But it's so much work. And as I always ask them now, could you please send me a really good picture of it with the signature and the date and everything and the size so that I can put it in my catalogue resume, which is growing. I must have made thousands of things. When I was making collage, I would make them so quickly. Tearing paper, I'd paint paper, tear it, stick it, just really, really fast working, but really sort of spontaneous and not at all worked, Sometimes my work nowadays can be more worked, I'll go over and over, and if I don't like it, I'll just keep painting over or keep making, changing the shape of something until I'm happy with it. Sometimes I'll chop the head off or chop the arms off, or, having spent hours getting just the hand perfect, and then I'll chop it off and do it again. I am a perfectionist. And
that also, I think there are lots across different disciplines, lots of creative process where so much of what you create gets discarded. That's what goes into the final piece, is what doesn't, make the cut.
Throw it away as such. I'll just keep working it till it goes right.
And that shift in your approach has happened as you've progressed, I guess, personally, and as an artist and got older. That's evolved. That's evolution, I guess.
It just keeps on. It will work in the end. I won't stop until it does.
Yeah.
And it won't necessarily be my best piece ever. And sometimes I'll live with it for months before I'll have it cast. I've learned to do that more because I was so prolific 20 years ago, I'll now look back at some pieces and think, I would have made that slightly differently now, It's dangerous when I have a wax made of an older piece to cast in bronze. I'll be so tempted to change it to how I would do it now, but I have to stop myself from doing that.
I have a frustration if I find myself in situations where people want a decision from me when I'm not ready to make it now with work. Yeah. And increasingly I will avoid those situations because increasingly in the world that we live in, the answers that people don't want to hear are, I'm not sure. Let me think about it. Yeah. I'll come back to you. Yeah. And so there've been lots of time in the past where with different projects or things, I've made a decision to be decisive and to help things progress. And then you look back at it and think, I wish I'd taken a beat on that or waited. We were talking about your work and how and where it's cited. Is the work by another artist that you've enjoyed your work being adjacent to or in proximity of?
Often it's abstract artists, because I think that having two figurative artists in the same space doesn't always work. So a lot of my clients in America would collect lots of different artists, and there was one, for some reason, most of my clients would have a Bernard Venet, and he makes these huge abstract forms. They used to be circular and now they're sort of long in steel, big steel girders that he bends into circles. Very abstract, but they look great on the landscape. And often my clients would have those and a piece of mine. And so I took, from 6 different clients, I took photographs when we had real cameras of my work through his circular sculpture. And he lived across the road from me, he still does, in France. And one day I went and I posted this envelope, because I didn't know him at the time, and I posted an envelope with 6 photographs of his work through my work through his work. And it was only years later that he invited me over, and then I said, do you remember getting an envelope with photos? That was mine.
What a great connection.
Yeah.
You mentioned photography. Are you particular... This might sound like a stupid question. Are you particular of how your work is photographed? Do you play a role in how it's kind of captured or documented in that sense, or are the people that you enjoy working with and you let them do their thing? I have
people who, like Anne Perkis has done a lot of my photographs. I take a lot, but they're not high quality. You can see the difference when a professional comes and takes the photographs with a proper camera. And Anne has been taking my photographs for a long time, but she's just stopped, I think. But I have a whole collection of her work, and she did a lot of portraits for Sculptor Park. She did an exhibition of artists in their studios.
Right.
So yeah, I do prefer having professional photographs taken, and I usually let them get on with it. I tell them if I like a certain angle, and they'll do that as well as what they want to do, and then we'll just choose the best one. But because I'm in the Sculpture Park all the time, every day, all day long, I get the best light. So sometimes they'll arrange to come on Tuesday and it will be pouring with rain or really dull and no nice sky or anything. Whereas I go out for a walk with the dogs at sunset and it's the most stunningly beautiful sky, and it does make a difference when you have a huge empty landscape with a sculpture and there's a beautiful sky. It just, everything pops, So yeah, it's nice to have both, professional photos and then the slightly less professional but moody photos.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you say, light is everything, isn't it? And the right degree.
Now the iPhones are so amazing. I can get pretty good pictures with those.
Yeah. So you do have an iPhone. You are.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But do you limit yourself on kind of apps that you download, or?
Oh, I don't. I mean, the only thing I have is Instagram, which then goes to Facebook, but I don't know how to do Facebook. So, but I'm not very kind of.
Do you have music on there?
On my phone, no.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I listen to Radio 4 or Audible when I'm in the studio.
What do you listen to?
completely bonkers things like Outlander, which I'm obsessed with. And I listen to it right to the end, 10 books or 9 books. And then I start all over again, because it's kind of, I don't know if you know the story, but it's about going back in time, and it's all sort of, it's not of this time. It's of 200 years ago, and living out in the woods and being self-sufficient. And
it sounds familiar.
So it's kind of feels like I could have lived then.
Yeah.
I don't like television. I don't watch television ever. I don't even really know how it works, or I do like watching things on my iPad when I'm working out or whatever, because working out can be quite boring, and so I watch silly things. Watch movies about camper vans at the moment. Specific, because I'm going to get a camper van, because we grew up with VW campers, so I want one again now.
We are a big family of camper van owners. Not myself, but my parents, uncles, grandparents have had them, and typically spent a lot of time kind of across Europe and on adventures. So they'll love that shout out for camper vans.
Well, I'm going to do my own. I'm buying the bear shell.
And you're gonna
do it myself.
So you'll take a break from work while you do that, or you'll do that in and around?
It's going to have a mini studio in there.
Yeah.
I'll be going to places to work.
On tour?
Yeah.
All right. Throughout your career, we often talk about mentors and influences. Have you had consistent mentors, or people who've come into your life or work and made a particular impact on you or your work?
No, I mean, the only person really who I could say was helpful to me was Elizabeth Frink, because she put me forward for that Yorkshire Sculpture Park residency, and I'd go and stay the weekend there, and I'd be so impressed by the fact that you could be a woman, an artist, and very successful in a man's world, because when she started, it was definitely a man's world. And even when I was doing it, it was a man's world. And I was always treated like the little girl making sculpture, and, and she felt very much the same, but she was definitely a force of nature. And she inspired me just by being who she was. We didn't talk about how to make sculpture or anything like that, but just being with her and seeing what she had achieved was inspirational to me.
And there's beautiful examples of her work and Hepworth's that are virtually permanent.
Yeah.
In where they're on display at the park. Has the industry or the art world changed that much? Do you think? Do you feel now that it is a level playing field, or moving towards that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sculptors are men, but it's definitely changing, because a lot of the curators are now women, and so it's definitely changing in that direction much more. And there was a time when it was, well, not so long ago, when it was actually when they were starting to be more women making sculpture, that actually it was favourable towards women, because it was new, and it was like, okay, let's get more women artists in.
Right.
But now it's much more level now, I think, than it has been.
What would you say, a friend of mine, Ezra Bailey, is a sculptor, and a really, really great sculptor. And we were talking last night, knowing you were coming on the show. And he continues to make really, really beautiful work. But he asked, or he was wondering, have there been times when you've ever, commercially, you've been successful from the get-go, but have there ever been times where you've lost your way with your work, or felt a distance from it, or maybe even been trapped within some of the themes or narratives of it that you want to break away from, or any challenging moments really where you've?
I think the thing is that I have so many ideas for work. It's like long list, so that I never have a break from thinking what I'm going to be making next. But I suppose when I had my own foundry at my studio, we were literally just churning out bronzes and they were just selling. And it was, to me, that became almost like it put me off a little bit because it felt like a factory. And so I stopped having the foundry at home, and it's better to be working, having that as an outside thing that I pay for. Because that way you can then decide what, you don't have to be feed the beast, feeding it,
so to speak.
And my assistants who work with my two assistants, they are both they can both do different things. So they don't have to specifically, Charlie doesn't have to specifically do mold making and waxes. She can do whatever I want her to do, any help I need. And same with Rob, he will do the sculpture part, or he'll be working in the studio with me.
And you yourself are a multi-hyphenate. You can,
yeah, so I go from studio to studio and, walk around in circles doing a bit of this, bit of that. Sometimes I'll do this in the morning, then that in the afternoon, and something different in the evening. It's a good question because.
Well, I think it is for somebody who has had the success that you've had. It perhaps is a more obvious question for somebody who's not always been the flavour of the month and has had, but you from the get-go, there was obvious commercial interest in your work. But
there are times when it, like at the moment, it's not great for art. It's not selling as it can sell. But I never get despondent because I know it's not because of me. It would never put me off working. I'd never think, oh my God, because having a property the size of I do and all the people who work for me, you have to keep paying them.
Yeah.
But luckily, I'm very careful to make sure I keep enough money back. I used to just right, I've made that money, I'm going to spend it all now having that cast, and I'm a bit more careful now to make sure that I can keep everyone and never run out. But, you have to make more of an effort sometimes than just sit back and work and be lazy and not talk to people. Like I'm doing this with you now. Maybe 10 years ago, I might have thought, no, I can't.
Is this because of a dry spell? Is this why we're here?
Sorry?
Is this because of a dry spell?
No, I'm just saying, you have to make an effort.
Of course.
I can't just sit in a field and work and expect everyone just to come to me. Galleries are closing now. The art market is not what it was 20 years ago. Galleries are closing, people are working online. You have to make an effort and put yourself out there on Instagram. I know that not all the big commercial people aren't going to go on Instagram to buy sculpture, but it just keeps your name out there. And, you have to make that effort. You have to go and talk to galleries and say, public spaces, do you want to put a piece in them? I went to Salisbury Cathedral and asked them, said, do you want to put on a show? And that was one of my most successful shows. So yeah, you have to make a bit, and it's uncomfortable. It's not the kind of thing I want to do.
But it's essential. It's
essential, and a lot of people are much better at doing that than I am. When I see other people being like that, it puts me off. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to get involved with being a pushy artist. And I'm not pushy, but sometimes you just have to make a bit more effort because it's so easy to just be home and work and work and work. But then you've got this huge amount of work that you have to, you can't just keep it all. You have to show it and sell it.
Yeah. I think as well, it's important to remember that the process is as interesting to many people as the final product is. And so I think it's about finding the right forums and platforms to put yourself in where you can have those conversations, share insight, whilst also putting yourself out there a little bit. But I have many, many talented friends who really struggle with knocking on the door or putting themselves out there.
But also, galleries don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't like it. They don't like artists coming. How else are they supposed to do it? So that's why, in a way, having the online thing now is so much easier for people.
Isn't that a funny one-way traffic that it would be so driven by the gallery and not actually an artist coming forth and saying, I have something to say right now, or there is something pertinent or pressing within my work or within me. Yeah, no,
galleries are so unfriendly towards artists. Commercial galleries will not let you just walk in, and they just don't want to know.
So it's so networking and relationships, as we've mentioned, have obviously been a key factor for you. You have got to put yourself out there. Are there artists, younger artists, I'm thinking, that you have your eye on at the moment, or people out and about?
I don't look at other artists
at all.
Literally never look at other artists. I never go to exhibitions. I mean, I should, I suppose, but I'm just too busy. The reason I'm successful is because I work all the time. I think unless you're completely obsessed and driven in your work, then there aren't enough hours in the day to do everything.
Yeah.
Because I do, I cook and I walk the dogs and I do my exercise. And people say, what about the weekend? Well, that's when I work and do other kind of work, or, make the soup for the week so that I eat nice food. And I've started being more sociable, though. I'm definitely being more sociable. This is my New Year's resolution.
So that is, when you say sociable, do you mean putting yourselves in situations that are not art specific?
Yeah, going out to dinner when I'm invited, even though I'm the most impossible person to feed. Doing that, going out, seeing people. There are so many nice people. It's quite a shock. I keep meeting all these nice people.
Who knew? But what a great dinner guest you are, would be. Are you finding some escapism in that? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I like dinner parties. I'm not so good at loud parties. I'm not a very big drinker. And when I see the thing starting, it's all exciting at the beginning, and then suddenly everyone starts getting very drunk and it starts going into this deep hole, and then I've got to escape. I'm not very good in loud rooms because, just having to shout to be heard.
I can't hear now. I'm years of, I guess, being around speakers and performing in different things, but my hearing is deteriorating now, particularly certain frequencies.
So that must be hard.
If I'm in a bar or I don't get to many clubs now, but if I'm in that kind of environment, or like you say, even just as it gets like, I just have to sit and nod, and I hate it.
Yeah.
My poor wife, like I can really bark sometimes if somebody mumbles something to me. Yeah. But anyway. And it's interesting you say about the drinking, because actually as an extension to her question, Claire said she might like a bottle of kombucha because I think she doesn't drink, or as part of such a clean lifestyle.
I make kombucha.
Yeah, but I did recall, because you actually introduced me to Belvedere vodka. It was one of the requests for your...
I'm not a non-drinker. I just don't... I'm not a regular drinker. I'll have a vodka at a party, but I won't have two.
Anything in moderation.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine after this interview and getting to know you even better. If you weren't an artist, can you imagine what else you would do or fill your time with?
I'd probably turn my studio into dog rescue kennel, which would be even harder work, because I have actually volunteered in a dog rescue in Spain, where they rescue all the galgos del Sol. They do an amazing job. And I went out there thinking I was going to be cuddling puppies, and oh my God, it was horrendous for a start, watching these poor dogs coming in. And it was smelly and disgusting, and it was they're just saints, these people. The people who work in dog rescues, they are saints.
Yeah, because they're not all timid little things looking to be safe. Some of them
aggressive and badly treated and full of ticks. And I remember this dog coming in, and she said, "Okay, just take the ticks off now." And I'm like, "Okay, do you have a little thing to take them off with?" She said, "No, just flick them off with your fingers." And there for hours flicking ticks off these dogs. I mean, it's just horrific. But anyway, I'd do that, or I'd be a cook. Not a cook, but like I would cook for people, but not necessarily in a restaurant atmosphere, because that's just too aggressive.
And what did you bring me today? You did.
I made you some plum compote, because I make things without sugar and without I'm just sort of quite health conscious. So it's just cooked and cooked and cooked, and then it's got apple juice in for sweetness.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Tell me, what advice would you give to yourself now?
To myself at my age.
If you were looking down on yourself, what advice would you give to yourself?
God, blimey, that's a difficult question. Maybe to try and switch off a little bit when I'm with other people, like my grandchildren.
Do you mean to switch off the work?
Yeah. My girls think I'm too obsessed with my dogs, which I am, because you can't just leave dogs at home and they can't look after. So everything is ruled around them. If there's not someone to look after them, it has to be me. So they get very jealous that I'm not there to to spend more time with the grandchildren, especially the one in Italy. So I can't just leave for 5 days without someone to look after them. So I would, I don't know how that could change, but
the switching off thing, I think.
Yeah, I find it hard to switch off. I cannot watch a movie without doing something else. So I decided to start doing tapestries years ago because I can then sit and do that. But you do need light. So then whoever was watching telly would get annoyed by the light. But I can't sit and watch a screen without doing something else. I still can't do that. Maybe I don't need to be able to do that. But
no, my mother is a prolific knitter.
Yeah.
And I've been to the pictures with her before where she will sit knitting whilst watching.
Yeah. I'll because we've got so many apples. I'll get the apple, like a huge basket of apples, and I'll sit there peeling apples and cooking them. So like making loads of apple compote because at least you're, killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah. What I enjoy about walking the dog is I'm getting some much needed exercise in. I'm walking the dog. I will often listen to an audio book at the same time.
So I do exactly the same.
I like to layer those up,
or I'll have one of my conversations for the day, one of my daughters or my mother, when I'm walking. So yeah, I'm very much a multitasker. And it amazes me when people aren't, like my ex wasn't. And it's quite amazing. He could literally just relax and watch a movie all day, And I was like, I just can't do that. I'd get twitchy. Couldn't do that.
Well, pun intended, we're all wired differently, thankfully. What's on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
So I am looking forward to my camper van very much, but I'm also...
Will you document this, by the way? Will this... Because I think this is great social content for you to document.
Maybe I should, yeah. And then, because I'm probably going to sell my house in France.
Okay.
And then I'm going to turn my camper van into a little mini French farmhouse on wheels. Sounds bonkers, I know.
No, I think I love the brief.
Yeah. So then, maybe I should video that being done. Rob's going to help me do it because he's very good with his hands. So I'm going to do that. But also the work I'm making at the moment is so big that I'm making it big enough to live in. I'm going to be making it big enough. So the last one I did, you can get inside and he's got a staircase where you go up and you can look out. And but I've always imagined getting together with an architect and making homes, little mini homes, but that are sculptures. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it? To have a sculpture in the garden, but actually it's
that would be so cool. And it is one of those markets or industries that is diversified and become so competitive, people looking for a way to differentiate themselves. Yeah. So I think the hybrid of an art and cultural experience that is itself the accommation a work of art, I think is really interesting.
So, I mean, I was doing, I've been making, like the piece that you watch at Sculptor Park that you can walk through, they did put a little railing around it to stop the school children climbing all over it. But the idea was not only that you can see the sky moving through it, but that you can walk through it and become part of it. And there's a little hollow inside where you can stand. So actually becoming very much more, I can't think of the word right now, when you interactive,
engaging. Well, So where are you at with that then?
The last piece I've just made was, well, I say just, it took years, so it feels like it's just been made. But he's only 22 feet high, but you can get inside him, and he's got several platforms that you can walk up to. And so, but he's not watertight, like you couldn't make your house in there yet, but I'm planning on making versions much bigger and actually have a room inside. I mean, he has a door and a lock and everything, but it's not really habitable yet.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Well, they're two very exciting projects, both of which are worthy of...
and I'm putting in a swimming pool in my garden, but a natural pool, because it's getting so much warmer in England now. Yeah,
especially where you are as well.
So because I'm such a big swimmer, so I'll be able to swim at home.
Are you? This will be the penultimate question. The landscape and that surrounds you, are you kind of the curation of the landscape itself? Is that something that you've ever been or are particularly involved with, or do you leave it to its kind of natural course? Other than
I planted 4,000 trees,
and
then they've grown obviously, and then they've self-seeded, and so it's changed on its own. Like at the moment, because we're going to be digging more, we're going to be...
I guess what I'm asking is, have you allowed it to evolve quite naturally, or have you curated the landscape itself much?
We've allowed it to do its thing, but we change it a little bit now and again for, when we need to. But, I mean, the trees are amazing. I mean, they're huge. After 30 years, they're absolutely massive. People couldn't believe it when I said I planted all of these. It's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Because it's very high up where I am. So it's great to have that protection from the wind with all these trees. Because I can walk through my paths, and some of them are just avenues of trees that I can walk through, and I'm protected against all the elements, even the rain, partially, And that's so nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so little projects then, selling your house in France, building and refitting a camper van that will become a French
farmhouse
studio space, sculptures that you can live in, and the natural pool, swimming pool outside. Yeah,
the only problem with the camper van is that I don't really like driving very much.
Okay.
So I kind of need a driver, but then I'll have to put him up in a B&B or something, which is quite bonkers, isn't it? Because I don't want to have him or her in my camper van. There's not
you could also incorporate that into your increased socializing, where you could have guests, or
but
collaborators
then they have to
that
leave
you travel.
at night.
Well, that can be the name of it.
Yeah,
you have to leave at night.
Yes.
Yeah, on the road with Sophie Ryder you have to leave at night.
Yeah.
You've been, as I knew you would be, a fantastic guest, and the podcast really is supposed to be so much more about process and what goes on behind the work. So we don't talk about the work as much as we might in another conversation. And you've been the perfect candidate for that, and you've been very open. So thank you very much. My final question for you, as I end each of these interviews, is: who do you think I should interview next?
Oh God, I don't see that many people, so I'm the worst person to ask that question. But I'm always really surprised. I don't know why I should be, but I am always surprised when I start talking to my the men who deliver my shopping. Because they're always really interesting men in their sort of 60s or 70s who've had absolutely incredible careers. And they've just decided in their retirement to drive Waitrose or Ocado vans. And I'm always really surprised that you start talking to these people and they've had their own businesses and they've been really successful, and they just found it lonely not working, decided to go out and start driving. But I'm not saying that's who you should. But
that's a very, very niche. That reminds me. I think B&Q often employ kind of older team members or retirees or things, which I think makes for a similar dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I was looking for something slightly more of this
artistic.
world.
I know. I don't know what to say about that one really.
Well, maybe that's a follow-up then.
Yeah,
maybe I'll
have to think about it, because I could start saying you should interview an art gallery so they can tell you how the art, well, what the art market is like, or maybe an older art gallery who has been around throughout to tell you what it was like and what it's like now.
I think it's a good suggestion. There's certainly, it's an awful word, but everybody is having to diversify.
Yeah.
And nobody's core function is enough now to get people through the door. Everybody's having to do more.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what you're saying, a very, very loud and competitive and crowded market.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think that's what I'll take from that. I'll look for a legacy gallerist or gallery.
Who's still working that now.
And what it takes to survive and to still be working now. All right. This episode, we've been getting notes from Sophie Ryder. Sophie, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
There is so much, and
And you didn't ask me the question about what's my favourite smell.
Hold on. You're back with me for getting notes with Sophie Ryder, who's just reminded me that we didn't do Come to Your Senses. So this is a little bolt-on added bit. We'll show some nice footage of Sophie's recent exhibitions, and then we'll bolt this on at the end. Sophie, we've come to your senses, as you just reminded me. Mm-hmm. So in order to escape, give me some of the sensory recommendations or things that you enjoy.
My favourite smell, and you're going to think I'm very perverse, is the smell of cut grass, freshly cut grass, but on my dog's feet. The smell is absolutely intoxicating.
Now that, when you said it was going to be perverse and then you started with cut grass, I thought, well, that's very pedestrian.
I love the smell of cut grass, but then when you mix it with the dog's foot, as long as it's got nothing else on it, obviously, but it's incredible.
Yeah. So you won't relate to this reference, but Coco, my dog's feet, often smell of Doritos.
Oh, really?
They've got a light whiff
dry
of
biscuit smell. Yeah,
exactly. And yet there is something not unpleasant about it.
No, it's true. Because people who live in cities, obviously you don't want to be sniffing those dogs' feet. But the dogs who live in the countryside who are just walking on grass, and it is an incredible smell.
Yeah.
I do like the smell of, I'm not very good with perfumes and things like that. I don't like. It's the first thing, if someone comes to work for me, no perfume. But I do like the smell of jasmine flowers, real jasmine flowers. And also that's an evocative smell for me because I have jasmine bush in France. But also the smell of logs and pine cones in the fire in my mother's house in France. You walk in the door, and even though there hasn't been a fire lit, it's just there. The pine cones are such a strong smell.
It's so evocative, emotional memory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Smell.
That smell, I walk in there and it just brings me right back to my childhood.
I love the smell of manure, but not immediately, but a week or two in when it's been spread and it kind of dries, and that reminds me of being young and farms, and it's quite also the different soaps that my grandparents used. I remember very viscerally. That kind of takes me back to. What about your other senses? Was there anything else that came to mind? We go for all five, so we have taste. Is there any kind of if in a moment where you treat yourself, that's interesting for you? Oh,
I make my own treats. So I like a medjool date with hazelnut butter in it, and then you freeze it, and then you dip it in 100% dark chocolate, put a little bit of sea salt on the top, and then back in the freezer. And I have a lot of them in the freezer.
Yeah, okay.
And that's my treat.
The saltiness with chocolate. Yeah, all right. Very nice.
Yeah.
What about sounds? We've spoken a little about music.
I love music, but proper music. And I can't bear all this house music and this loud banging. All the music that has the loud beat that goes on like that literally wants me. I feel like chucking something through a window when I hear that. Can't bear that.
It's very rock and roll of you.
Oh my God.
So what's proper music then?
Like jazz or, I love rock and roll, but not to sit and listen to.
Yeah.
That's for dancing. But jazz or, classical. But tend to listen to, as I said, Radio 4. Radio 4 is like company for me. I leave it on. I leave it on in the house, even when I go into the studio, so that when I come back to the house, there's someone talking. Used to drive my fiancé absolutely crazy, and he'd always come in and switch it off, But I love having that on. It's literally because my father used to listen to Radio 4. And I remember the Archers and hating it, but got so used to it that actually now I listen to it,
Yeah.
And the news over and over and over. And even sometimes if I can't sleep, I just put Radio 4 on very low and just have it. And it actually sends you off to sleep because it just repeats and repeats and repeats. And I always know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Because I've been listening to it all day long.
My mum uses the shipping forecast.
Yeah, I love the shipping forecast.
Get off to sleep, that is. Well, you've said that you don't really have time to pay attention to kind of other artists. But again, if you're pleasing your senses, are there any visual mediums? Or I guess for you, maybe that's just a walk outside and the different...
You mean like films and things like that?
Anything visual that's an escape for you?
I mean, I just like going for walks. For me, that's... I mean, if you were thinking in terms of a movie or something, I can't, the cinema, I can't be sitting there just watching. I fall asleep. The minute I sit down in a cinema, I'm asleep within 10 minutes. So there's no point. So
that's because you need the rest. That's also why that is.
Probably, yeah. But no, I mean, in terms of watching a movie, I like things like Downton Abbey and all those kind of things. Or Poldark or,
Oh, so nice period stuff then.
Period dramas. I cannot bear television. As soon as an advert comes on, it's like, oh, God. My mother's always trying to get me to watch dogs behaving badly. And I keep saying because she said, it's amazing. In half an hour, they've managed to train this dog and you should get him to come and help you train your dogs not to kill rabbits. And I say, Mummy, A, is not true. They don't train them not to do those things in half an hour. It probably takes months. And anyway, they cut it and make it seem like it, and it's not always true. You've got to understand it's for television to make people like you believe that they're making this happen.
Yeah. Well, and like we said, you simply cannot train a dog out of hundreds of years of instinct. But
I don't enjoy the advertising pushing you to, I don't like that. So I don't watch television ever. But as I said, I do like watching period dramas, and I don't actually watch them. So then when I do go and look at them on a big screen in the telly room, I think, I haven't seen that before. I thought I'd seen that, but it's because I've only listened to it.
Yeah. Just been in the atmosphere of it. Okay, well, that was a great little bolt-on of coming to your senses. I'm glad that you called me out on that and we dropped it in, especially with such a specific reference. The smell of cut grass on your dog's feet. Yeah. Country dogs, not city dogs.
Underneath their feet, not on the top of their feet.
No, I understand it. Amidst the paws.
It's like in the pad.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. You've got to try it when you get home.
Yeah.
I thought I could make a perfume called Eau de Paw.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you need to commercially diversify, that could be, All right, add that to your list of what's on the horizon.
What's on the horizon, yeah.
Sophie Ryder, that really is it. We've been getting notes from Sophie Ryder. Thank you.
Thank you.